Hi, I'm Luke with Out of Darts. Today, Hasbro sent me over 3 new blasters from the Rival line. The Fate, the Pathfinder, that's the Vision, the Fate, the Vision, and the Pathfinder. There's quite a bit to go over here, so let's get going. I've loved Rival since the second it came out. It felt familiar, a little bit like paintball, but a lot more fun. Quick disclaimer, these were sent to me for free from Hasbro, and thank you very much for sending them over. I was glad to get my hands on them without having to hunt them down like a crazy person driving all over the area looking for the first stores that have them in stock. We decided to do this video as a combined review for the new series, the 3 blasters themselves, along with the ammo type, rather than breaking these up into individual videos, because I think it makes more sense to talk about them as a whole, especially for this channel. Before we really dive in, I did want to make a nice mention on the packaging. I love the branding and packaging, and the blue color scheme really plays to my color palette. But in addition to that, this is Hasbro finally coming full circle with their plastic-free packaging, which I think is a really nice step in the right direction. The super wasteful clamshell packaging that ends up all over the place to hold the rounds in place is just ultimately garbage. So you will notice at the bottom of each of these packages, there's a little thing that says plastic-free packaging, and there's a little asterisk that says except tape and glue, which I think makes sense. I would assume that eventually they're going to aim to get rid of the tape and glue as well, but I like that this is at least potentially more recyclable than the normal packaging they normally have been producing for years. And for a giant company like that to actually take a step forward in that, even if it's just a marketing ploy, I think it's a pretty solid idea. The next unique thing that I want to cover before we get into the blasters themselves is the ammo. For the very first time since the release of Rival about 6 years ago, almost 6 or 7 years ago, we'll put that up on the screen when it actually came out. I always kind of forget. But for the first time ever, we've got new ammo. The ammo is hexagonal. It's got a nice Nerf logo now instead of just the R for Rival. And on the other side, we've got an actual Rival logo, which is pretty cool. The actual dimples themselves are much larger, and in our limited testing here so far, they do seem like the groupings are slightly tighter. However, I haven't done anything scientific, so we might actually follow that up with like a lockdown video on a couple different blaster types to see how they fare, and then also to see how durable they are compared to the standard ones. I really like the feel of them. They've got kind of a little bit more glossy feel than the standard Rival rounds, and they're also slightly heavier than the traditional ones as well, which I think would likely further help the accuracy, but it would potentially diminish your actual effective range and potentially diminish your actual FPS reading as well, because the larger the mass of the actual ball itself, the more force required to fire it at the same velocity. I think this is pretty neat to see something actually improved, or quote-unquote improved. Again, they seem better in our limited testing, but I think it's great that they're actually trying to improve it rather than just saying world's best blaster company or #1 blaster company and such. Now, the color scheme on this whole lineup is just awesome. We've got these bright blue, yellow, and orange, really aggressive color, and I think it just looks awesome. I think it's a really good step in the right direction. Overall, the design language throughout feels very similar to the Curve Shot line. So to me, it feels like these were probably developed by the same team, or at least with kind of keeping the design aesthetics in mind. Here we've got the side swipe, and you'll notice we've got a sort of similar feeling minimalistic stock that is too short to use comfortably. In fact, the actual sizing is fairly close as well. But I am noticing some overall similarities to the Curve Shot line, and I like that because the Curve Shot line was a very comfortable line. The grips on all of these blasters feel very, very good. Let's dive right into the blasters. Starting off at $12.59 retail, this is the Fate. The Fate is very similar to a knockout blaster. It is a single prime. The nose pops forward, you load a single shot, and then you close the nose and fire. Now, this may sound very loud. It is because we've already upgraded it it's worth noting we're going to have springs for all 3 of these blasters, along with some other fun mods that I'll mention along the way if I happen to think of them. Ergonomically, the blaster is extremely comfortable. This is one of the better grips I've felt on any of the blasters. It fits my normal adult large hands very well. We've essentially got a T-pull in back, which seems like they're listening to us and watching what we like, because we keep taking their blasters and putting T-pulls on them. So putting a T-pull on the blaster by default, pretty solid option, you guys. And I don't know if there's any actual influence coming from the community to Hasbro, but I like to think there is, because we love this stuff just as much as their engineers do, I'm pretty sure. Up top, we've got something I haven't seen in a Nerf blaster as far as I can recall. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but we've got an adjustable sight. Now, on the Fate, the sight is only adjustable forward and backwards, which is going up a sloped ramp, meaning we're getting elevation adjustment only, no left to right correction. Still, I think that's a pretty neat feature, and I think it might actually be useful too, especially with that nice day glow. We've got yellow in the back and then the day glow in front, so we kind of have nice colors to line up. Should work pretty well. I think this blaster is going to be wildly popular for rebarreling, for maybe putting our little rocket adapter in there, and just a variety of other things. It's essentially a, just a big plunger tube in a nice, comfy package. A couple things worth mentioning. The trigger itself does not have a spring, though it does feel quite good. It is just a leaf spring, which is a bent piece of plastic. That's obviously done to generally cut production costs and decrease assembly time. This blaster in our testing is hitting 94 feet per second average. That's a 20-shot average with a 1.3 feet per second standard deviation. That's very, very, very consistent. So that's really great to hear. Performs pretty comparable to other rival blasters. When we went to upgrade this thing, it does take a K25 at about 100 millimeters. And that brought this up to about 122 FPS. That's actually what's in here currently. It's still quite easy to prime with that nice T-pull, and it seems like it'll hold up just fine because these blasters are generally built quite well. However, one downside to upgrading this blaster is that the plunger head itself is a one-way detent. It's got 4 little leaves that when the plunger tube is inserted and connected, those lock in place, making the spring pretty difficult to remove. We had to use multiple screwdrivers to carefully pry them out, and it's a little risky and you might damage your blaster trying to mod this one. Optionally, you could also try to unscrew the spring all the way back out or clip it out and then put in a cut coil. That's a pretty easy way to do an upgrade. If you're interested, let me know in the comments and we'll do mod guides on all 3 of these if there seems to be interest. Overall, I think the Fate is a really solid blaster. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. The only reason I wouldn't give it 5 is that modding thing there for me, from my perspective of running this shop and supporting this community, makes it kind of a bummer to open up and actually mod. It's definitely a more difficult springer to mod without breaking, not unlike the Knockout, which is a very similar blaster to some extent. Moving on to the Vision, this is our middle offering, and this comes in at $20.99. It's available pretty much everywhere: Amazon, Target, Walmart, Entertainment Earth, just like the Fate was. And this is pretty much a Chronos, and I don't say that as a detractor. It is essentially a Chronos with a better magazine system that holds more rounds. The blaster has a capacity of 8 rounds, which are very easily loaded into this port on the side by bringing this down. I like this because it's a really easy blaster to load on the fly, and this works just like the Finisher, which I'm going to grab off of my wall right here. Finisher was a great little blaster, and it's kind of a very similar option, except this never worked the way I thought it was going to. And I still don't know why they even did this. I guess the idea was you could load this magazine faster, but every time I think about this blaster, I'm like, why can't I load it super easily while it's on here? And they've essentially fixed that with this. You put the slide down, you load it in, you release the slide, and you're good to go. You can fit a 9th ball in here if you prime one into the chamber before loading the 8 in here. Pretty slick. In back, we've essentially got a nice big pull, hook pull. Not quite a T-pull, but I can get 2 fingers in there, even though my fingers are quite large. Ergonomically, just like the Fate, this blaster is quite comfortable. You've got a natural place to set your hand up front if you're going to use this as your only blaster, and it's got, again, a very beefy grip with a nice textured, molded surface, and I like that quite a bit. It's very easy to fire, and just like the Fate, the Vision has these sights day glow up front and yellow in back. The Vision, unlike the Fate, has both up and down vertical correction for your aim and side to side. Now these are done pretty simply with one little notches. I assume there's just a little piece of plastic hitting a little indexer inside there, but it's a nice touch and I think it could be quite fun. If you find your balls are consistently going to the left or the right, you could just adjust to compensate, and you know, the 10, 12-year-old in me would have played with that feature alone for hours. I do think there's like a lot of room here to make probably an easier one to adjust, since this is a little bit wonky, but it's totally usable and honestly is quite functional when it really comes down to it. Performance-wise, the Vision hit the lowest of the 3 new offerings. We tested this and on a 20-shot average got an average of 84 with a standard deviation of 1.9. So both lower performance and a higher standard deviation. However, when we upgraded it, it fits our Chronos Heavy Prime spring, which has been a very popular spring for the Chronos, one of my all-time favorite rival blasters. Then it hits 135, and we'll put up the actual numbers and standard deviation on the screen here too, because we haven't recorded those yet on the chronograph. So it seems like a really great upgrade candidate. It doesn't have the plunger head issue as far as installation, so it's a lot easier to get back together. However, Greg, my mod tech, did say that this part was rather obnoxious to get back together. The spring wants to go everywhere as you're getting it back in, but it's one of those things, once you've done it, probably not so bad the second time around. Every blaster is a little bit different assembly, and that's kind of half the fun, is like figuring out the puzzle that Hasbro and Nerf put together for us. Like the other blasters, we've got a safety on the side. I believe all 3 have safeties. They are in different locations. I didn't mention that on the other one, but it's in a really awkward spot for a right-handed user over here. I don't know if they're just saying half of you get lefties, so the Fate's got it on the left for a lefty, the Vision's got it on the right, so it makes more sense for a right-handed person, and then the Pathfinder's got it on the left. Interesting little comparison there, but it doesn't really matter to me. At the end of the day, I don't use the safeties very often. I usually just deprime them and take the ammo out. Because there's nothing worse than being about to fire during a toy blaster battle and having it locked up on you. But it's a nice feature, and it's kind of fun. You know, as a kid, I would, again, like that. This is ambidextrous. Like all the other rival blasters, all 3 of these blasters feature hop-up, which is pretty essential in getting the accuracy. Still a little confused why the Hyper blasters didn't have hop-ups that actually did anything, but obviously we solved that ourselves. I don't see any reason to modify the hop-ups so far, even in upgraded format. You'll get a little more float. If you wanted to reduce that, you could of course trim them down or replace them altogether with something a little lower profile or softer. So we're back a week later after initially filming the review when we played with the blasters in the warehouse and initially checked them out. Our filming schedule doesn't allow us to always, you know, play with the blaster then review it, but it is my goal to play with every blaster before actually releasing a review video. That's been hard during the illness, but I think we'll get better at it now that games are a little more regular. So with the Vision, the middle of the 3 blasters, I was really disappointed to see how poorly this worked with third-party ammo and used ammo as well. So right now I've got the stock ammo in here, and I'm gonna try to replicate what happened this weekend, because we were playing with this and we both Perry and I experienced a lot of issues ultimately. So I'm gonna go through a full 8 rounds of the stock new ammo that's included, the Accu-Rival. What'd I do? And now I'm gonna load up just a variety of different various ammo. There's some rival ammo in here, there's some headshot ammo, we've got some X-shot ammo, kind of a little bit of everything. Hasbro doesn't get to choose what I do in a review video, which is why I'm putting ammo that's not theirs through the blaster, because this matters to me. We'll see if that means they stop sending me stuff. If it does, well, too bad. So we'll try again here and we'll see how it fires with a variety of ammo. Well, I mean, so far it's actually working all right. little bit difficult to replicate. I almost want to just keep trying, but this ammo bag here is a mix of 4 or 5 brands, and it seems to be working fine, but more than once, it was like every time I tried to use this at the game this weekend, it was jamming with third-party ammo. At the end of the day, this loading issue, which I can't seem to reproduce here, was really not fun when we were actually playing at the game. For me, it really kind of pushes this down to maybe a 2-star review for this blaster. I didn't experience any loading issues whatsoever with the other 2 blasters, so I think those are definitely the better of the series. Anyway, I just wanted to drop in and add this to our review video as we learn more. Finally, we've got the Pathfinder. Now, the Pathfinder is the most obvious primary blaster. It's got a 12-round magazine, a little bit more on that later. The Pathfinder comes in at $31.49, that's US dollars of course, and it seems to maybe only be available on Amazon and Entertainment Earth. Now that could be changing, could just be that the listings and shipments haven't got out yet. Not all companies put stuff up immediately when available. I think this blaster looks awesome. I mean, it very much feels like some of the Caliburn, or rather the Rival burn with the angled mag well. I think the reason this keeps getting done is because there is this nice tapered angle on the magazines themselves, and there's just a nice spot for that to feed. And I think if you shove the magazine straight up, this is what Slug dealt with and I dealt with when building blasters, you end up fighting this tooth for the actual pushing mechanism, and tilting it this direction basically gives you a clearer shot with better tolerances to get the pusher through. Ergonomically, the blaster is very comfortable as far as the primary grip. This feels great. The large paddle is actually quite welcomed, I would say, as far as getting this magazine in and out. Personally, if I had designed this, I would probably want to see a flared magwell here, but I know that's something that Hasbro really hasn't done yet, and I assume there's probably additional manufacturing costs to make that part the way I would want it, because you'd have some odd directions and potentially an additional piece just to do the flare. But there is room there to do a flare, so it kind of seems like, boy, if that part wasn't connected to the whole trigger area, I'd consider just making that. But maybe there's some way we can do a nice add-on. Continuing with ergonomics, I do think that this stock is really, really short. I can get my eye down to the sight line, so that's pretty good compared to others, but ultimately I think I'm going to build some sort of extension, and I'm not sure if I'm not gonna hack this off and then mount something new, or just build something that clamps over the top of this. Not entirely sure, but I think personally for me, it's gotta come out for my adult body about another 3 or 4 inches, and I think it would just be rock solid. Up top, the Pathfinder has the same day glow sight up front and the yellow sight in back, and here this time we get some nice fun actual dials to dial in the height and adjustment for left and right. And I think that is pretty fun. Again, I don't know that hobbyists are going to spend too much time dialing these in, because I tend to just shoot and re-aim based on where my last ball went, but I know the kid in me would have played with this for ages, you know, guessing that my target's 30 feet away, I'm going to improve this, I'm going to tune this down, there we go. You know, I would have had a fun time. So I think it's a nice feature. Up front, the pump grip is a bit awkward. I think it has something to do with this just being flat. It's not horrible. If your hands were smaller, it'd be totally fine. It's 100% usable, and it's got nice texture here, so I feel like they really nailed it here. But for my hand, this needed to be more rounded. I do think I'll port over one of our other grips from, we did one for the Takedown and we did one for the Hades, both to accommodate a larger hand to get better purchase and really grip. But I would say from the start, this is actually better than the original grips on those blasters. It just feels a little bit small and a little bit funky flat here. Not a deal breaker, I'd say, but not as comfortable as I'd like it between those two options. The trigger on this blaster has got a very different feel. It's almost like some of my old paintball triggers, where you'd have a trigger pad actually, you know, locked on there. So we've got a nice big flat surface. It's actually very comfortable. It doesn't look like much, but it's a nice looking and nice feeling trigger overall. The magazine brings up one other interesting point. So first, we've added these nice Ranger loop or bumper here in the bottom, which serves two purposes. A, it's made of TPU. So when this hits the ground, it's less likely to crack open and break. So I think that's great. And since this is the orientation it's normally sitting in, you know, if you accidentally do this, you're going to get to fire that one extra ball up, but at least you won't crack or break the magazine. So I think that's a nice touch, in addition to being able to actually clip this onto something, or I don't know what else you would do. I can't say I would run around with them hanging, but maybe someone will find a good use for that. I think that's a nice addition. However, up top, we found a little bit of a compatibility issue, and I think we've got the fix as well. So this is a genuine Rival mag with genuine Hasbro Rival rounds inside, and here's the new mag. And right here, there are 2 additional notches, and these notches they're purely an add-on. So they are, I'm actually sitting here trying to figure out whether this is the same mold. And I can't tell yet. No, it's a different, oh, now I'm so curious, because it could be the same mold. So when you're thinking about injection molding, we've only done one product, but when you make an adjustment or a change to a mold, you can only go one direction. You can add plastic to your design. You cannot take plastic away, because adding plastic is taking away metal, and taking away plastic is adding metal, which is much more difficult to do when you're talking about 2 large pieces of metal. These are not likely the same mold. I'm going to say that because unless that would be weird. But I would love, man, I wish I knew the answer to that, because that would be fun. Anyway, it seems like the only real change here, aside from the bumper and the bottom, are these couple little fins here. And since these are just there to help the new mag release catch, we've got 2 really easy ways to fix this. The first would be to redesign the catch, and the second would be to 3D design 2 little pieces that just glue into the side of these mags. So I'm going to get on that right away, because there's no reason to not make this compatible. As far as I can tell, there's no reason to not have this be compatible. It just seems like it basically locks in place, but it doesn't quite get into the right spot to fire consistently. You can see there, that one actually didn't feed. So, but if I push on it, then I can get a shot through. So it seems like there's just an alignment thing that can be fixed by making the mag well match the little teeth that are inside here. Performance-wise, on a 20-shot average, the Pathfinder is hitting 90 FPS with a standard deviation of 1.3. That's again quite good, not quite as good as the Fate, but just marginally better. Upgraded, we're seeing 125 FPS out of about 100mm K25. Again, we will have production springs for all 3 of these blasters ultimately, and they'll be linked down below when we do have them. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one 3 out of 5. I love the styling, but compared to the other blasters, the offering isn't quite as solid for me. For a younger audience, the rating would definitely go up and it'd be on par, but I'm rating these from my perspective as a modder. The stock's a little bit too short for me to actually use, which, you know, in the curve shot line, I basically never use this blaster because it's just awkward. It's like it's too small to fit here. It's too big to be like to really run around without a stock on it, and it's not really a sidearm. And this is kind of falling in that category. However, I think with a replacement stock and a replacement pump grip, we'd be ready to roll along with fixing the magazine issue. In case anybody wants to know, the worker mags also fit in here but do not lock. However, this is unrelated to anything Hasbro has done. Worker plane didn't measure how these all lock in the different various blasters. So there are very few blasters these actually work with, which is a shame because 15 rounds is pretty cool. They are missing indents here altogether to actually lock in place, which, by the way, you can file out, cut out, and make work, but it's a little bit of effort. Lastly, this is like bonus content. It's like a blast from the past. So I don't remember what the original Nerf footballs with the fins were called, but I played with them a lot as a kid. I was not very good at football or throwing footballs, but these things make you feel like you are much better at it. Because they self-stabilize and throw really well, they are an absolute blast. And I think my daughter and I will hopefully someday play with this. I don't have a rating for that thing. It's not a Nerf blaster, but Hasbro did send it, so I'd at least yeet it into the warehouse. At the end of the day, I am thrilled to see more Rival. As many longtime viewers of the channel know, Rival is one of my favorite ammo types. I do love the short darts, but Rival is fun for so many reasons. And whether it's just the ease of loading the magazines with the omnidirectional ammo, hoppers themselves or just the fun flight characteristics of the Rival rounds. I think this is a great addition to the entire lineup, and I look forward to playing with these at future games. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions on these blasters, do leave them down in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. We are going to be diving into these and seeing what mods and upgrades we can do, and hope to have more to share with you soon. Thanks again. Until next time, I'm out of darts.